Good evening, Algonquin. It is just before 7 p.m. on Thursday, February 3rd, 2022. My name is Kate. I'm the Adult Services Programming Specialist here at the library, and I am joined tonight by my very good friend and our local historian, Phil Aleo. He's going to be talking to us tonight about Meadowdale Raceway back in its heyday. We are expecting quite a few of you to join us here tonight, so I'm just going to talk for a few minutes. Feel free to turn me down, whatever you got to do. If you're new to Zoom, I don't know how you could be at this point in the pandemic, but if you are in a webinar. What that means is you cannot see yourselves and you cannot hear yourselves, but that's okay. As long as you can see me and Phil and you can hear us, you're good to go. A couple things to note for this evening's presentation: the chat feature will not be on. If you need to get in touch with me or you have a question for Phil or a comment, you're more than welcome to utilize the Q&A feature, which you can find by scrolling along the bottom of your screen. It's just a little icon, looks like two chat bubbles right on top of each other. Anytime tonight, you can put in your questions or comments and we'll answer them at the end as time allows. Phil has revamped this presentation and repackaged it, especially for us, and we're very thankful to him for that. So I am going to turn things over to him in just a few minutes. I want to give everyone a chance to get in here. Another thing to note is that we are recording tonight's presentation. We'd like you to share it with your friends and family after you've seen it. Let's see some other housekeeping notes. If you are interested in other events that we have coming up here at AAPLD, I'm going to drop in a link to our online events calendar. Feel free to browse through that. I don't have any more Phil programs on the calendar at this time, but I'm sure we'll get one on there after we wrap up here tonight. He's always a crowd favorite, and I just love to have him. Okay, and if you are just joining us, my name is Kate. I'm the Adult Services Programming Specialist here at the library, and I am joined tonight by my good friend Phil, who's going to be starting up his presentation in just a minute. I still see some people coming in. Again, if you're unfamiliar, you are in a Zoom webinar, which means that you cannot see yourself and you cannot hear yourself, but it's okay. You only need to be able to see and hear Phil and myself in order to enjoy tonight's presentation. The other important thing is that you know that the chat feature is turned off, and you may instead use the Q&A feature to communicate with Phil and myself. This is a lengthy presentation, so at this time I'm going to turn it over to Phil. Those of you just coming in, this is being recorded, so if you miss anything or need to step out, no worries, this will be on our YouTube channel within a couple of days. Phil, it's all you.
Okay, thank you so much, Kate. Well, I want to thank all of you for coming on to tonight's Zoom presentation. I'm really excited about giving this to you. I've been working on this for a number of weeks. It's become by far the largest presentation that I've ever put together. This is 172 slides. So you're in for some interesting photographs and discussions here with regard to the racetrack. So let's get started, shall we? For some reason, my clicker is not working. Hold on one second here. Let's try that again. Okay. Well, okay, let's see here. Okay, there it goes. All righty. The Midwest motorsport legend, Meadowdale Raceway, is what I'm basing this whole presentation on, this book. And I'm dedicating this presentation to a lifelong friend of mine. His name is Nick Mascari. Nick loved speed and he loved Meadowdale Raceway. He was a member of the Sports Car Club of America, and he was in multiple races, including the final SCCA sanctioned race at Meadowdale in 1969. So Today's presentation is based upon this 206-page book, which is titled The Midwest Motorsport Legend, Meadowdale Raceways. This is the only book ever written that details the history of this historic racetrack. This book has sold throughout the world, including countries in Europe, as well as even Australia. 3 well-known magazines that are sold nationally reviewed this book and gave it rave reviews. An example here is Sports and Exotic Car magazine. They stated, and I have it highlighted in yellow, in total, an excellent book. We don't need fewer racetracks, but those that do vanish need this sort of treatment. Another magazine that reviewed the book is Vintage Race Car. And they stated, this book showcases excellent archival photographs and is a compelling need or read for anyone interested in American road racing history. And one other magazine is Victory Lane magazine. They also highlighted the book. And they stated, this is a book well worth having for all historic racing enthusiasts and racers. One of the best books on a historic circuit and those times. Well, although many people know about Raceway Woods, there are many more that have no idea that there was once one of the most remarkable racetracks in the country located right here in Kane County. Looking at an aerial view, it was located along Route 31 between Algonquin and Dundee, just north of Carpentersville. Let's go in a little closer, shall we? This close-up current aerial view of Raceway Woods still clearly shows the outline of the infamous racetrack that closed after its final year in 1969, 53 years ago. So looking at this photo or at this photograph here, let me highlight the track for you. There you go. So you can see the track as it was and as it is today. Pretty cool, huh? This is an awesome photograph. This is the same aerial view, but only back in the 1960s. Back then, there were no trees at all, except for those toward the northern section of the track. So let's look at some of the entrances that were used back then on this aerial view. Here's the first entrance, the main entrance that was on Route 31. This is across from the strip mall that El San Burrito was in. Now the restaurant is named No Manches. That's right across the street from that on 31. The second entrance that we'll point out is the entrance on Huntley Blacktop. And this is still the entrance that we use today from this road to get into Raceway Woods. And then the third entrance that was used back then is up by the silo, which again is being used up, today too for Raceway Woods. And that's where the parking lot is as well. So here you kind of get the bearings of what we're looking at from this photograph of the track. But how it all began, let's discuss this. All credit goes to one man. His name, Leonard W. Biesinger. Here is the story behind this man and the infamous racetrack that he built. In the 1940s, Leonard Biesinger was already a well-known and highly successful home builder in the Chicagoland area. Having been raised on a farm and his father, Ollie, having been involved with horses, Leonard shared this interest as well. Following through on this, in or around 1948, he purchased the 230-acre Edwards farm that was located just north and west of a small town named Carpentersville. The farm's eastern boundary was Illinois State Route 31. Leonard Biesinger turned the old dairy barn that was located next to the silo on Route 31 into a stable for his string of Hackney horses. Hackney ponies were originally bred in Great Britain. These horses were known for their great stamina and the ability of trotting at high speeds for extended periods of time. Prize-winning Hackney ponies made up Biesinger's stock. And as you can tell from these photographs, weren't those beautiful horses? They are just awesome. Now, you know, these ponies are really very special. Did you note the way just a few minutes ago that they trotted? You might be thinking, how did they train the horses to trot like that? Well, the Hackney foal you are about to see was born on May 2nd, 2016. And this video was recorded when he was just a few hours old, untouched by human hands. Now watch this. Isn't that beautiful? Watch it in slower motion. One more time. Watch this here. Look at that. The natural trot of a Hackney horse. Just amazing. So this really clearly demonstrates that this unique trot is natural and not taught by humans. So yes, Hackney horses and ponies were very special. Well, without a doubt, these were very special ponies that Mr. Biesinger was raising right here at Meadowdale Farm, right off of 31. But then, tragically, on May 15th, 1949, a flash fire ripped through the stables of Meadowdale Farm and killed 25 Hackney horses. This is the newspaper article that appeared in the Arlington Heights Herald a few days later. It said that 25 valuable show ponies owned by Leonard W. Biesinger, Arlington Heights contractor, were lost in a sweeping barn blaze May 15th that caused a loss estimated at $100,000. The Hackney ponies were to be shown in Dallas, Texas, June 5th at the opening of the show season. They also were to be shown at Houston, Shreveport, and Little Rock. Lost in the fire also were show rigs, harness, and other driving equipment. The farm is located on State Route 31, 1.5 miles north of Carpentersville. Among the stock lost in the fire were 2 nationally known stallions, Brown Park Master and the Old Town Glowing Star. It says the flames lighted up the sky and attracted hundreds of motorists. So this was a terrible, terrible fire, a loss of $100,000. Now that's back in 1949. You know what that equates to today? $1,171,000. So that was the loss that day in 1949 by today's dollars. Terrible, terrible loss. Well, Biesinger, although deeply saddened, turned this tragedy around. He rebuilt the barn better than it was before. The lower level now included the paddocks for the horses and also an indoor riding ring. The third floor overlooking the riding ring was made into a living quarter. His children would frequently stay here on weekends. They loved coming to this farm. Now, Biesinger redeveloped his string of Hackney ponies, and all went well for the next couple of years. His success as a home builder was continuing to increase. In the July Tribune of 1950, it was announced that he was preparing to build 271 homes in the Scarsdale subdivision of Arlington Heights. Yes, he was living the American dream. But then on November 10th, 1951, just 2 years after the previous fire at Meadowdale Farms, another fire swept through the newly rebuilt stable. The Tribune newspaper reported this, said fire yesterday destroyed 14 prize Hackney ponies. In the main barn on the Meadowdale farm of Leonard W. Biesinger, wealthy Chicago and Arlington Heights building contractor in State Route 31, about 1.5 miles north of Carpentersville, Kane County. Biesinger estimated the loss at $100,000 again. The cause of the blaze has not been determined. Biesinger hurried to the farm from his real estate and construction company offices at 5325 Devon Avenue when notified. The barn was built after a similar structure was destroyed May 15, 1949, with the loss of 25 horses. The loss at that time also was set at $100,000. It does say that 8 of Biesinger's prize ponies escaped death yesterday because they were at the International Livestock Exposition for the Daily Horse Show. So 2 fires within 2 years. Again, another $1 million in costs or value at this time, $1,072,000 for this fire. So combined, these 2 losses totaled $2.25 million in today's dollars. Quite the loss for a person to undertake. Well, he didn't rebuild the stable this time. The foundation of the barn is all that remained for decades. The farm continued to be worked, but he no longer invested his time and money developing his string of Hackney ponies. This photo, taken in early 1958, displays some of the Meadowdale Farm buildings that were still standing and the infamous silo that stands on Route 31 until this day. Now, note the foundation to the right of the silo. This is the barn stable that had been destroyed by the fires in 1949 and 1951. The late 1950s were pivotal years for Mr. Biesinger. His most massive undertaking in his life was in full swing. He was in the process of developing and building one of the largest subdivisions that had ever been built up to that time. Initially, this was supposed to become a town named Meadowdale, named after his farm on Route 31. But because of complications, he instead annexed his development into the town of Carpentersville. This photo that you're looking at right now shows dozens of people lined up to view the model homes and make a purchase. He was selling as many as 60 homes in one weekend. Because of Leonard Biesinger, the population of Carpentersville increased from 1,523 in 1950 to 17,424 by 1960, just 10 years later. Here's an early photo of his development. And this is really just a fraction of what he would accomplish in the years to come. In fact, let me show you. Let me get my laser pointer out here for you. Here we go. So here's Route 25 right here. Here's where the shopping center is going to be. The shopping center has not even been built yet. Here's Lake Marion Road right here. Sunny Hill School is going to be right here. So it kind of gives you an idea of what was built at that time. Just really a fraction of what he ended up building. Well, in or around 1957, Biesinger became interested in the idea of developing a racetrack. Prompted by his sons, Leonard Jr. and Greg, the idea of building a racetrack came to fruition. Leonard Biesinger, as well as his sons and others, trekked to some of the world's most famous American and European racetracks. Some of these included Sebring over in Florida, Le Mans in France, Riverside in California, as well as Monza in Italy, as well as many other tracks. He consolidated the best features of these tracks and returned to Carpentersville to revive and capture the spirit of the old with modern day speed. Road racing, for the most part at that time, was being seen on oval tracks. But Biesinger remembered the enthusiasm of the crowds during the open road era of the Elgin road races that had been held just a few decades earlier. He wanted to restore this excitement with the racetrack that he was preparing to build. So by 1958, his plans were finalized and work on Meadowdale raceways began. The work of transforming his 230-acre plus farm into a racetrack began. The pre-construction sketches had been made. The track had been designed and laid out. By early June of 1958, the heavy-duty equipment was in place and construction began.
Phil, I'm going to pause you for just a moment. Your mic
Okay.
is clicking a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe we can try reconnecting it.
No, it's me. I had my clicker close to the mic. I didn't know you didn't. Okay. I'll move
All
to the
right,
other
we'll
side.
give it a try now.
Okay, sorry about that, everybody. I didn't know you were hearing that because I couldn't even hear it here hardly at all. Okay, no
Thanks,
problem.
Phil.
Thanks for mentioning that to me. Okay. Okay, we'll go on. Okay. This photo was probably taken in late June, early July, 1958. The track had been laid out and the surface is being prepared for paving. It looks like some pavement has already been laid out on the straightaway. Here's where the straightaway is at. You can see that pavement almost there, but a great shot, isn't it? Here's a view of the newly paved track winding around the silo near Route 31. And again, look at this here. You can see the foundation of the barn that was still there. In fact, I'll tell you something. I remember that foundation was there for many years. I've been here all my life in this area, and I used to come here when I was a kid, and I remember going up to that foundation and going into that silo. In this photo, we see Leonard Biesinger holding the shovel with Edward Weigert, the vice president of Pepsi-Cola bottlers, and the Illinois governor, William Stratton, standing on the Monza wall, then under construction. Recall that I told you that the Monza racetrack in Italy was one of the tracks reviewed? Well, there was an inclined wall at the Monza that was 38 degrees in angle. Biesinger surpassed that here at Meadowdale by the Monza wall being a 45-degree incline. This was the steepest incline in the world for any racetrack right here at Meadowdale. To build this wasn't easy. It was a very challenging thing to build because there was no equipment that existed to build it. So they had to create their own equipment to build this wall. This special rig you're looking at here was built to check the degree and the arch of the banking on the Monza wall. Again, there was no simple way of developing this concave angled wall that they had wanted to build. A crane was being used on the top of the wall along with a cable to pull the roller up and down in sections to smooth out and compress the asphalt. This had to be done because nothing else could be used to do it. The problem was, unfortunately, this ended up causing a ribbing effect, much like a washboard that really shook up the racers when they were on this wall, racing it on the pavement. In spite of this, overall, the drivers took it all in stride, though. They were just thrilled to be able to race here at Meadowdale. This is a cool photograph. This photo came from the Bruns family in Carpentersville. And based upon the fact that are as yet no guardrails on top of that wall, and we can see construction vehicles, this track was still under construction. But look at these vehicles that came onto the track, including Elmer Brun's 1910 Ford Model T. Here's a detailed guide that was used for spectators that came to Meadowdale Raceways. And this is so interesting looking at this. You can see the parking lots. The parking was here, parking over here. You parked in the center, over here. Here's the back straight, the grandstands. Numerous, it says here, like refreshment stands. I counted, there was 9 refreshment stands located on this map here throughout the whole park for people and so on. It's a great little guide of what it was like to come here back in its heyday. But I'm going to show you another drawing that I think is just spectacular. This one here of the racetrack. Not only did Meadowdale boast the highest incline in the racing world, the Monza Wall, it also included the longest straightaway in the world. It was 4,000 feet long, or a mile, 3/4 of a mile in length. That's really remarkable. Some of the track's features were given names to honor those who had worked with Leonard Biesinger, helping to build this famous racetrack. I'll show you some examples of that. Greg's Corkscrew, that was named after his son, Greg Biesinger. White House Bend, that was named for Philip Whitehouse. We have Len's Hairpin for his son, Len Biesinger Jr. And by the way, this man, Len Biesinger Jr., was instrumental in designing this track. We had the Serpentine, which was followed by Carl's Bend, named for Carl Anderson, who's still alive and who worked very closely with Biesinger in many of his endeavors. Steffen Straight for Ed Steffen. We had the Back Straight, which was followed by Doan's Corner for Dick Doan, who owned Doan Chevrolet here in Dundee, and who was involved with this track to a very large degree, and also had the Corvette dealership right here in town. Here's an aerial view of Meadowdale Raceway looking east. I love this photograph here. In fact, just to give you some bearings here, if you know where this is at, this is Ranch Road right here that comes off of Huntley Blacktop right over here. So here's the river. There's the Monza Wall. This is cool. This is a chart that shows many of the general features of the track. Let's point out a couple of these, shall we? The cost, $3 million. That's what it cost to build this track in 1958. I figured that out based on figures today. That comes out to $29 million in 2022. The cost of building the track. The seating capacity in the main grandstand was 6,000 seats, and there were 500 in Doan's Corner. Parking capacity, 100,000 cars. It's amazing. Pit accommodations, 78 pits with electricity and running water. Parking area behind each pit for vans, trailers, and tow cars. 2 pairs of modern washrooms on the first floor of the main control tower. Pure oil gas facility in the pit club. So just showing what was available here for the drivers. This was a first-class racetrack. And this was interesting, the track widths, because when you walk the track today, you think it's so narrow. How could cars race on here? Well, it's shrunk in size, width-wise, tremendously. The straights were 32 feet wide, the curves were 45 feet, and the Monza Wall was 50 feet in width. Okay, here we go. Here's a view of the main entrance on Route 31. This is an awesome photograph, just showing the openness back then of how it looked. And this is, like I said, across from the El Sombrero restaurant. This is where they pulled in from that strip mall on Route 31. That's where this is how it looked. But look at the prices. Let's blow that up. $3 admission. That's what the cost was to get into a racetrack or a race, to a show. So it sounds like a little bit of money, but back then that was more than you realized. $3 in 1958 equates to $29 in today's dollars. Recall that the track cost $3 million to build. It would take 1 million spectators to break even. And that's not counting all the operating expenses that would be included for the track. So this track had some big plans and big goals to achieve. This photo was taken from high up on the Monza wall on the opening day weekend, September 14th, 1958. The inaugural day races are taking place. There was a reported attendance of 100,000 to 150,000 spectators in attendance. It's a great photograph. The pit accommodations you see here, as we pointed out a few minutes ago, included 78 pits, more than any other racetrack. And all were enclosed with electricity and running water, parking area behind the pits and so on, the restrooms, and gasoline was pumped into every pit, pure oil gasoline. Beautiful photographs. This photograph is taken from high up on control tower number 8. And here we have a bird's eye view of the back straight leading right into the Monza wall. Hold on one second. This is my voice for a minute. I need to get some water. So what's interesting here is this. Do you see the road built under the track to get into the middle of the track? Here's the middle of the track here. Look at this. This is the entrance back here of Huntley Blacktop. They came in and they would come through the track. I'm going to actually show this to you. Here, let me click on this here. There we go. That's their entrance into the center of the track. They went under the roadway in those two locations. Isn't that cool? Beautiful picture. The inaugural day races in September of 1958 were without a doubt the largest event that had ever taken place here in Fox River Valley. 150,000 people were expected to converge on Carpentersville during the track's opening weekend. That's a lot of people. Pepsi Cola, the featured soda at the track, received an order for 100,000 Pepsis. This was the largest single order to be used in a one-day sporting event in the company's history. There were supposed to be at that time for the opening day races, 30 refreshment stands set up throughout the track. Sadly, though, the opening day races were marred by two events. September had been a very dry month in Northern Illinois. Not a drop of rain had fallen in Carpentersville in over a week. The temperatures the day of the opening day races was close to 90 degrees, a hot summer day in September. It was also an extremely windy day with ongoing 25-mile-an-hour winds. The freshly seeded grass hadn't started to grow, so the acreage around the track was dirt dirt for 230 acres. Imagine being in the middle of 230 acres of dry, dusty dirt on a windy day. Oh, let me go back one for a second there. Yes. Okay. This is of course is not a picture from the racetrack, but it certainly gives you an idea, a simulation of what it would have been like. The result of being in the middle of this would not be a happy day for many, many people. It was so bad that visibility was often down to less than 100 yards during the races. So I show this picture for a reason. How would you feel if you were one of the thousands of women that had joined your boyfriend or husband to see the races on opening day? You probably would have been dressed in one of your light colored summer dresses. That's how women dressed back then in the 50s. To be dressed in a dress like this, to be pelted with wind, dust, and dirt all day long would not be a happy experience. And that's what happened. I will tell you, I have interviewed many people and talked to many people over the last 10 years about the race and that had been there in person. And the one thing that they all remembered was that the track was a dirty track. That's how they remember it from that opening day. And they never forgot it. That was one of the bad consequences of the opening day races. If only the winds wouldn't have happened or the grass had begun to grow, this would have changed everything for the opening day races. And that included the fate of this young man in this 2-liter Ferrari, car number 34. This was a 25-year-old man named Robert Walker. He was an Arkansas insurance executive. This photo was taken minutes before he entered Doan's Corner. In the 9th lap on the 3rd race on Sunday, this man Walker looked behind him as his Ferrari approached Doan's Corner at more than 85 miles per hour. A gust of dusty wind made him lose control of his car, and he flipped end over end and pummeled into a pile of hay. Walker was dead of a broken neck and a fractured skull when he arrived at a nearby hospital minutes later. So yes, these two events, the disgruntled spectators due to the dust and the wind, and the track gaining the reputation of a killer track, these would be two factors that Meadowdale Raceway would work hard to overcome from that day forward. Although Meadowdale Raceway's inaugural weekend was met with several unexpected hurdles, the races and the track marched forward. Chuck Day, one of the nation's most experienced drivers, pronounced the course a good one. And he said, next to Riverside, it's the best in the country. And by the way, it was Chuck Day, who was the winner of the inaugural day feature race, driving one of the fastest racing cars of the day, one of Lance Reventlow's Scarabs. And here he is. This photograph is a great photograph. It shows him with Leonard Biesinger, Lee Phillips, and Sol Polk. Who's Sol Polk? Sol Polk is from Polk Brothers. Many probably remember that name. Older individuals would recall that. They were a big company selling appliances of all types here in Chicagoland, a big supporter of the racetrack. This is a photo of Lance Reventlow sitting in one of his Scarabs. He is in one of the pits right here in Meadowdale in this photograph. And I'll tell you right now, these are some of the most beautiful cars. I love these Scarabs. What beautiful machines, designed and built for and by Lance Reventlow, the man you're seeing here in this car. Here's a bird's eye view of one of his cars, the Scarabs. I received this photo and many others from a longtime Carpentersville neighbor who took hundreds of photographs as a young man at Meadowdale. His name is John Freeman. So thanks to John Freeman, we have this beautiful photograph today. So do you know who Lance Rebentlow's mother was? It's a good question. Well, at 21 years of age, in 1933, she was one of the wealthiest women in the world. She was married to a famous actor, Cary Grant, but this wasn't the source of her wealth. Do you know who her grandfather was? F.W. Woolworth, the founder of Woolworth's stores. So yes, Lance Rebentlow was a very, very wealthy man. In fact, he was called the world's richest baby at birth. So this is where his money came, how he could afford to build these race cars we're talking about. And this is a good point. In 1979, Woolworths was the largest department store chain in the world. So we all recall Kmart and other stores like that that have come and gone. Now we have Walmart. Well, at this time in 1979, Woolworths was the one on top. Let's look at some views of Meadowdale Raceway, shall we? This is a great view from the bleachers looking south with the 4-story main control tower in view, as well as the paddocks and pits for the racers. And this, by the way, was taken on July 4th, 1959. A little bit better view of the control tower here, located at the start of the 4,000-foot straightaway. It's hard to believe, looking at these photographs as we go through these, that this is all gone, that it's no longer there. Such a huge deal, not too many years ago. Lens hairpin with the straightaway up above. Note the underpass that went beneath the straightaway right there. You see it? That's how they got into the middle of the track from this side of 31. Because 31 would be over here, no, on this, over on this side. This photograph was taken from tower number 1 looking south. Lens hairpin is to the left. The dirt entrance road that passed beneath the straightaway is in view, as well as the bleachers and the main control tower. And also up in the center, top center, right here, you see a refreshment stand, one of the larger ones for the track, I'm sure. This photograph captures a lot of famous racers. Ricardo Rodriguez, one of the most famous racers from Mexico. Lloyd Ruby, Jim Jeffords, Art Bunker, Augie Pabst. These were all very big names in the racing world back in the 1950s and 60s, and beyond that even. Great shot of the straightaway, heading the downhill straight. Cars coming right at you at this view. Beautiful picture. The Monza wall during a stock car race. Just imagine being on one of those cars in the upper part of the wall, that angle. That had to be really something to drive on this. This photograph came from a newspaper, but it's a great view because it shows, I like the way that it shows the entrance under the track right here, going to the center. It's a good view. There's the Monza wall back here in the parking. Fred Lorenzen Jr. from Elmhurst by his 1958 Ford on October 19th, 1958. Very famous racer. Another picture of him. He was the first driver to win the Atlanta 500. That's a 500-mile super speedway race. He was the first driver to win that 3 years in a row. That was amazing. And then in 1965, he won the Daytona 500. So he raced here at Meadowdale a number of times. Here's another photograph of him at this race. And look who's beside him, Lance Reventlow, the owner of those Scarabs we talked about a few minutes ago. Here, Lance is driving himself against Fred Lorenzen. And here they are coming off the Monza wall. Aren't these just awesome photographs? Lorenzen and his 1958 Ford won this race, and he averaged 89.87 miles per hour. And that's over 70 laps. So that was a long race, nearly 90 miles an hour. That includes around the curves and everything. That was his average speed. It's amazing. This is a beautiful photograph of Dick Doan, the owner of the Corvette or the Chevrolet dealership here in Dundee. Here he is on the Monza wall in a brand new Corvette. This photograph captures Leonard Biesinger himself on the as yet unfinished Monza wall in 1958. And he's driving a test model 1957 Super Sport Corvette. Another photograph of the Monza wall. This photograph is cool because this captures three famous racers. We have Roger Ward in the midget racer. We have Jim Jeffords in the Chevy powered Scarab. And then we have Lloyd Ruby in his Maserati, all again on the Monza wall. This photo was taken from the bleachers looking southeast. The long straightaway is upper left along with the dirt entrance road that passed beneath the straightaway. The entire view of Lens Hairpin is in sight along with the pedestrian bridge in the back view, the background there, right over here. It's for pedestrians. So here you're kind of getting an idea of what the track looked like throughout the track back in its heyday. And you notice that people weren't just in the grandstands. People were dotted all over the track. This is the way that it was meant to be, an open track. Again, Lens Hairpin in the foreground with the straightaway up above to the left. And you'll see also tower number 1, center in the top center there. This is a great photograph. You see in the background, here's Route 31. Here's the silo right over here. This is where we come into this day to come into the track. But look at the openness back then, just amazing. Talk about a famous car and driver. This is Roger Penske's Sunoco Camaro, driven by Mark Donohue during the 1968 Trans Am race here at Meadowdale. It was held on July 6th and 7th, 1968, and Donohue won the Trans Am race with this Camaro. Very, very famous car. The Penske Trans Am Camaro, this car sold, I think it was this car at least, he had a couple of these Camaros, but he sold one of his Sunoco Camaros, which this is, in 2016, for $990,000. You heard me correct, $990,000 the car sold for. And by the way, I'm talking about 1968 a lot, and I'm also talking about the Monza wall a lot. I should mention to you that the Monza wall was removed prior to this race in 1968. It was replaced with the blacktop that we walk on till this day on the south end of the track. So the Monza wall has been gone since 1968. This is a view of one of the pedestrian bridges over the racetrack. So people could walk all over. Another view of a pedestrian bridge to get across the track. Here's a look behind the pits. This picture captures Bill Sadler, another well-known and successful racer. And here he is sitting in his 1958 MK2 Corvette. This photograph was taken in 1959. Here's a photograph of the Skinner brothers 1957 Pontiac getting some assistance. It's a good picture because it captures, again, the pedestrian walkway over the track. I like this picture. Here it gives you a great view of what it was like to be sitting in the paddocks on the straightaway above the pits. It's a rainy day at this time in this picture, but it's still very cool. This photograph captures the pedestrian vehicle overpass that was located near the Serpentine. This is, again, one of the ways that the pedestrians, the spectators, could come and get into the center of the track if they so desired. This was the rental and sales office for the track. Now I kind of wonder, what was it that they were selling and renting at that time? I have an idea that it's the winter time. They're all wearing coats. So I have an idea, which we'll come back to in a few minutes, as to what they were perhaps renting there or selling. Here's the Midway Race Control Building on the track, built on the straightaway. Another angle of the same building. Here's the backside of the building, and this is kind of cool because if you look at the far left, you can see just barely the pure gas pumps far to the left, and then also you can see in the background here the bleachers. Here's one of the many refreshment stands that dotted the track. A car show at the track. This track had so many different events taking place. It's amazing. This picture captures a winning racer getting the flag, the checker flag. So the winning racer frozen in time. This view was taken from on top of the silo on Route 31, and you're looking south. Great shot. The same photographer took another photograph. He turned to the right and took this picture. Now you're looking north, and this is looking at Greg's Corkscrew. So you came in off of the straightaway over here, and you made the tight turn on the Greg's Corkscrew right here. Great shots. This is control tower number 1 on the main straight. This is a great view of the lower straightaway filled with racers. This race had probably just begun, looking at the positioning of all the cars. This is the section of the straightaway that was washed out for decades. The Park District remedied this by installing a pedestrian bridge a number of years ago. So I'm going to show you how it looks today. So this is how it looked back then. Just to get an idea of where you're at, here's how it looks today. There you have the bridge. Another view of the cars coming around the silo off of 31. Different angle. This is looking the opposite way. Again, I just love this photograph. Look at the way it captures the openness of this racetrack. Just beautiful piece of property. Well, now that you've become familiar with the track and have seen the various aspects of the track, this is a perfect time to show a video of an actual race. This clip is from a sanctioned race in 1960 that I'm about to show you. And let's see, I hope it works here. Oh boy, for some reason I can't get rid of this here. Let's see if I can stop this here. That's cute. There we go. Okay, so that's a clip of the race. So it was much more involved, but it's fun to show you a good sized portion that showed the track in various locations, and also the speed of these vehicles is really amazing. Well, Meadowdale Raceways was recognized as a course that demanded skill and present precision. It was no place for the faint of heart to be racing at whatsoever. There was only one death at Meadowdale Raceways, and that was on its inaugural opening weekend. However, it had its share of accidents, and here are some examples of cars and drivers that were involved with accidents. This first one is really amazing. This car you're looking at here was built by Ed Hamill. He's in front of his SR2. He built this car for Roy Cumnick. This car took more than 2 years to build. It cost $25,000 to build it back in 1965. And that equates to over $220,000 in today's dollars. So this car was completed. The very next day that it was done or completed, it was brought to Meadowdale Racetrack to race by Roy Cumnick. Here is what happened on the opening day. Within 24 hours of it being completed, it was destroyed. I had the privilege of knowing Roy Cumnick personally, and I interviewed him for this book that I wrote. And he told me that there was only that the clearance on this car was only a few inches from the road. So when Roy came to the Monza wall, he told me he was traveling at approximately 110 miles an hour. He immediately knew that he was in trouble. The rib effect of the surface was too much for his car. The car slammed into the retaining wall and it flipped over. And when it did this, it ripped off one of the 2 gas tanks and literally started on fire as the car skidded upside down along the straightaway for almost 800 feet, stopping in front of the grandstands. And looking at this picture, his helmet was dragging all the way. It was almost ground through when the car came to a stop. Unfortunately, it hadn't completely, or he'd be dead. He still was seriously injured, though. He had 2 broken ribs and a punctured lung. Now, this is the amazing story behind this man, Roy Cumnick. The next day, he was back at the track the very next day, and he was given the honor of waving the starting flag to begin the race. Unbelievable. Here's one more picture of the car, how it looked. It was utterly destroyed. Other examples. This accident occurred on September the 5th, 1959. This is well-known stock car racer Jack Reimer. He took out the barrier on the Monza wall when his engine locked up, but he walked away uninjured, didn't get hurt, so that's good. This is Dick Thompson, who you've heard about throughout some of these slides. In this picture, note the entrance booths to the right over here. Let me get my laser going again. Here we go. Here's the entrance booths. Kind of cool being captured in that picture. This date is September the 6th, 1959, and this is Jim Rathman in his Lister Chevrolet. This was a 50-lap USAC road racing championship. Unfortunately, Jim didn't make it to the end of the race. On the 20th lap, while in 3rd position, he tossed a wheel at the end of the straightaway. The car hurtled off the course and somersaulted several times, and it burst into flames. Jim was rendered unconscious. He was extracted from the wreckage by an emergency crew, and he was rushed to Sherman Hospital, but he only escaped with a concussion and several bruises. His car didn't fare as well as he did. Here's his car, how it looked afterwards. Here's another example. This is Lloyd Ruby in his Maserati when it crashed. And this is a multiple car crash that occurred on the straightaway right in front of the stands. You see the two cars here, the Vet and then this car here. Here's another view. I just was imagining being at this location at this time. Imagine the heat of those flames and the danger of an explosion. It's no wonder that the spectators removed themselves to the upper ends of the stands to get away as far as they could. Yes, Meadowdale Raceways equals thrills and excitement. No question about that. The Midwest Motorsport legend Meadowdale Raceways featured all types of motorsport races. The Trans Am races, which we've spoken about to a degree, those included also these very famous cars, these Javelins that did so well. Sports Car Club of America races. And by the way, this is a photograph of John Freeman, who was involved with these races, standing by his Vet. As I mentioned earlier, he was one of the persons that had given me so many photographs that I have that I'm sharing with you even today. Private clubs, such as the Chicago Corvette Club, used the track. Volkswagen Grand Prix races took place here. Go-kart track races, and not just for kids either. There was adults involved with many of these go-kart races. This is Roger Ward sitting in his go-kart aside his infamous midget, very famous man. Midget races. Motorcycle races were involved here. International races. Very big deals. This track was used for so many different functions and activities. It's just amazing. And how about this? Even snowmobile races were taking place at Meadowdale Raceways. And look at these early snowmobiles. Here's a great shot. All this and still, in spite of the huge variety of races happening at Meadowdale, the last sanctioned race would take place in July of 1969. It was run on the short 1.1 mile course, and the winner was Tony DiLorenzo. And here he is in car number 1 in the lead of this race, 1969. Last sanctioned race of this track. Now, a news release did come out in early 1970 regarding the USAC championship race. And by this time, Meadowdale Raceways had changed names. It was now called the Illinois International Speedway. So they stated in this article regarding this upcoming race in 1970, the living legend drivers of the famed USAC circuit, AJ Foyt, Parnelli Jones, Mario Andretti, the Unser brothers, all the top named drivers have been invited for this inaugural race of the nation's newest motor speedway, September 20th, 1970. Unfortunately, it never materialized. The track didn't reopen for any sanctioned races in 1970 or thereafter. Why did it close? The bottom line, the raceway failed to bring in enough money to keep it open. That's the bottom line. Now, there were a few drag races that took place after 1969, but these ended soon thereafter. The track sat empty for a number of decades. Here's some photos that I took starting in 2006, just to show how it looked at that time. Here's the silo. Another view. Here's the raceway behind the silo, how it looked 16 years ago. This is the the overhead pass for pedestrian cars by the Serpentine. Another view, a little closer. Here I am under the overhead bridge. Trees are actually growing through it at this time, back in 2006. Pedestrian bridge overpass. The skeleton of one of those at least. This is the tunnel that went under the straightaway to get into the center of the park, which I pointed out to you a couple times in a couple of pictures. Here you can see, let's get a little closer, how it's was totally collapsed and the inside of that was totally sealed up. And here you're looking at from inside the track looking out. Here's the straightaway in 2006. Again, more of the pedestrian, bridges for those to walk over the track. And this photograph shows the gates by the off of Route 31, the main entrance. Right now you're looking east, looking out toward 31. The original gates. These are still there. Unlike most racetracks that have closed and been torn down and made into subdivisions, Meadowdale Raceways has turned into raceway woods. In 1994, the Dundee Park District purchased a good portion of the old racetrack. And then in 2000, the Kane County Forest Preserve purchased the remainder of the property. These two entities own and maintain Raceway Woods today. So here is how Meadowdale Raceway looked from the air in the 1960s. It's a great picture. Let's look at how it's changed from this vantage point, shall we? Now look closely. There it is today. Much, much more growth than it used to have by far. We'll go back. Here's a picture of Doan's Corner, how it used to look. Here's how it is today. The Monza Wall, yes, it was removed in 1968, but the track was there, but just flattened. Here's how it looked. Here's how it looks today. Much more narrow, of course, than it used to be, by far. The straightaway as it was back then and how it is today. The straightaway, downhill portion of the straightaway, how it was and how it is. The silo, the track coming around the silo, again, the openness, what a change from today. The outer bridge located just past the Serpentine. This is how it looked over the years. To go there now, I'm sorry to say it's no longer there. It was just removed a few years ago, and it was one of the last remnants of the physical structures of the track to be seen. It's gone now too. So now this is totally open. This is the extension leading back to the main straightaway. This is where Tony DiLorenzo was in his Corvette. When I showed you that picture in the last race, this is where he was coming out of right here. this is how it looks today. And the silo. The silo displays the proud Meadowdale Raceway name and their sponsor to this day, Pure Oil. That's how the silo looks right now, which is so nice. Meadowdale Raceways holds a place in the memories and hearts of thousands that had the opportunity to experience the adrenaline rush of the race back in its day. Today, the area is renamed Raceway Woods. The adrenaline rush of the race has been replaced with the serene calm of nature, slowly recapturing her space. And that's what we're seeing taking place today at this racetrack. It is my sincere hope and desire that this presentation and my book will help to keep Meadowdale Raceways, the Midwest motorsport legend, alive and in the hearts and minds of thousands for years to come. Well, this concludes today's presentation. I hope that you enjoyed listening to this presentation as much as I enjoyed giving it. I know that probably many of you already have this book, but in case you don't, but want to get a copy, I would recommend ordering a copy soon. We are down to about 200 copies left in print, and then that's going to be it. So again, though, thank you for joining us tonight for this presentation.
Thank you so much, Phil. It's always a pleasure here to have you at AAPLD. I did post that link to the Meadowdale book in the chat. So anybody here is welcome to click there and you can purchase your copy. Before we wrap up and do questions, I'm just going to launch a quick poll so we can get a better feel for how many of you are here with us tonight. I know we had people going in and out, and sorry to all of you for the audio issue. Hopefully it wasn't too terrible.
That clicking noise is really bad.
Yeah, I think it's because you're using an auxiliary mic, but this is the way we look now.
Is it happening after I move the thing? Is still happening after that?
Yeah, but it's no worries.
Okay.
It was still a great presentation. Lots of fantastic photos. Okay, rather than raise your hand, I would prefer that y'all put your questions in the Q&A and we'll get there in just a moment. We'll actually get started while you guys are answering. Okay, Catherine had asked, how much were the winnings? Were there winnings associated with the races?
Oh, yes, I'm sure at the sanctioned races there was. But you know what? I don't have an idea on what the amounts were at that time. I really couldn't answer that question. Sorry to say. Yeah, I really was involved with more in preserving the history of the track more than getting involved with the actual races themselves. And that's what I did.
Sure. Okay. All right, let's see. Why was the Monza wall removed in the 60s?
Because of its construction issues from the very beginning. The way that they built it, they had to go like up and down horizontal or vertically with the roller to smooth it out, and that caused a ribbing effect. So the cars really had a rough time on that wall. There were cars were getting damaged because of it, and it was just time to take it down because of those issues, and so that's why they took it down. Okay,
that was asked a couple of times, so thank you for clearing that up. You got lots of thank yous, and a couple people said they'll be buying the book, so that's great. What was the total length of the track?
3.27 miles. It was a Grand Prix racetrack, and it never had the complete oval. There was, he didn't want the oval to begin with, but it was in the planning stages where it would have maybe been built later in life of the track, but it never materialized. So it was a 3.27 mile Grand Prix track is what it was.
Great. Somebody asked if I could send out the recording. I will do that to everyone who registered, so that will be coming your way up in a few days. Somebody asked, did they ever find out what started either of the fires?
I have no idea. If that was ever investigated in the first place, I don't know. So back then, it probably wasn't ever investigated. You know, I don't think it was ever considered arson. It was just probably something went wrong, electrical fire or something like that, but no one knows.
Did any Formula One drivers compete at Meadowdale?
I want to say, you know what? I hate to answer this here by guessing. I would think the answer is yes, but I don't know for sure because there was all kinds of races that raced here. I mean, it was one of the most popular racetracks in the country. It was called the Mecca of auto racing in the Midwest. So it was a huge deal. Unfortunately, because of the opening day races, that put two nails in the coffin day number one. And they never again had crowds of that size ever after the opening day races. But they did have many sanctioned races that took place, you know, in upcoming years. Whether or not there were Formula One cars, I don't really know for sure.
Did the Park District plant all the trees that you see there now, or did they grow just on their own?
I think everything grew there on its own. Yeah, I think I can answer that pretty much the way it is now. They may be planting some foliage now in certain areas for certain reasons, but before they even owned it, those trees have been growing for decades. And it's been just, yeah, it's a natural growth pretty much.
Okay, let's see. A lot of comments here. What would have been some of the top speeds on the straightaway?
Oh my goodness. Cars were hitting, oh my goodness, I'm going to estimate here, I would say between 130 and 150 miles an hour. I'd estimate they would be at that speed because they were coming off the Monza wall. And we know, for example, of Roy Cumnick, he hit that wall. When he hit it, his car was at 110 miles an hour when he hit the wall. So they were coming off the wall at that speed. Can you imagine that? And then heading down that 4,000 foot straightaway, they had to be moving. So they could have been going even faster than that. I really don't know for sure though. Like I said earlier, I'm not really a racing expert. I'm not a racing expert at all, to tell you the truth. I am just more of a historical person involved with the history of the track, more so than the races themselves.
Sure. I'm going to skip over some of these questions. A couple of people have very specific questions relating to engine tech specs and transmissions. I'm assuming that's not something in the repertoire. We don't blame you though. A couple of people said that Peter Repson, Mark Donahue, George Falmer are all Formula One racers that raced at Meadowdale.
There you go. I kind of figured the answer was yes for that, but I didn't want to say for sure because I wasn't positive. So that makes sense. Yep. Thank you for that. Yeah, I feel that many of these viewers right now have a lot more information or knowledge about races than I do.
Neil asks, is there a museum for the track?
There's not a museum, but I will say this. There is a club called MERPA, the Meadowdale International Raceway Preservation Association in Cary, Illinois, whose their whole focus is to preserve the history of this track. They have a lot of artifacts from the racetrack. In fact, Leonard Biesinger III is a member of MERPA. So that's Leonard Biesinger Sr. who built the track. That's his grandson. He's a member of the MERPA club in Cary, Illinois. MIRPA.
Great. Kevin asks, what is the population of the surrounding area?
Today or then?
I don't know. Do you know? Let's go with both if you got it.
Well, back then, the population of Carpentersville was growing. I mean, in 1950, it was 1,500, it was 17,000 in 1960. And Dundee was very small, you know. So I would say the total population for the whole area, including Carpenters in 1960, let's say, with Carpentersville and East and West Dundee was probably, I would estimate it at around 25 to 30,000 people total. Whereas the population today is closer to, I know it's over 60,000 people today, combined with all the towns, Carpentersville, East and West Dundee, and so on, the growth.
Yeah, I would say it's probably even higher than that if you take Carpentersville into consideration.
You're probably right. Yep.
Yeah, Carpentersville's grown to be a pretty large.
It really has. Isn't the population of Carpentersville like 45,000 itself now or something like that?
I want to say it's even. Well, I'm trying to think. I know that the library district there serves about 75,000, but that's Carpentersville, both Dundee, Sleepy Hollow, and Gilbert's. So.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Gilbert's is pretty small. So you're right. It's probably closer to around 70,000 people then, I'll bet you.
Yeah. And Sleepy Hollow in there for sure.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Let's see. We're going to do a few more questions here, guys. Somebody had asked if there's a way they can watch this again. Yes, it was recorded. I'll have it up on our library's YouTube channel, and I'll have it, Phil will add it to his page as well within a couple of days. One more question. Would you consider the 68 Trans Am race to be one of the most important races that they ever had?
That was definitely an important race. But not having knowledge of the historical value of the other races, I don't know if I could really answer that in an authoritative way. I know that it's a very famous race because of what it was, and with Mark Donohue's car and so on, and Roger Penske driving that car, or I have that backward. Roger Penske's car, Mark Donohue driving. Yeah, it was a very important race, but I don't know for sure. Yep. I'm very careful not to say or answer like I'm an authority on something that I'm not. So that's why I'm being cautious.
Well, we appreciate that more than you know. Somebody commented they are not an authority either, but they do have Google at their fingertips. So
there you go. There you
go. There's lots of information out there on Meadowdale. If you guys are Algonquin cardholders or Dundee, Fox River Valley cardholders, all of Phil's books are in our collections. You're welcome to come in and check them out. Or I encourage you to check out his website. I will always have something on our calendar featuring Phil, so check back soon. And I'm sure he'll be back on the schedule for summer. We appreciate all of you guys spending your Thursday evening with us. We had a great turnout. I'm so happy you guys stuck around. If you could hang for just a few more minutes, when I close the webinar here, there's going to be a short survey that pops up, and Phil and I appreciate your feedback. It helps us plan for the future and see where we can improve. So again, I thank all of you, and Phil, my friend, I thank you. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Likewise, I feel the same way.
Okay. Everybody have a good night. Bye.